press has made up so much god-awful, horrifying stories.
I know.
That are completely appalling.
I know.
Completely appalling. And so far from the truth. And it's made me to realize the more often a person tell a lie, the more times you hear a lie, I mean, you begin to believe it. Mm-hmm. If it's told often enough, you start to believe it.
Can one interview really change everything? For Michael Jackson, many believe that moment came when he sat down with Oprah Winfrey. Now, remarks connected to Eddie Murphy have added even more attention to the story. In this video, we're taking a closer look at the rumors, the interviews, and the key moments that got people talking. Before jumping to conclusions, let's go through what was said, what actually happened, and why this topic is still being discussed today.
Look, I literally got into an argument with Michael Jackson's fans, with Michael Jackson's daughter.
Things weren't always this way between Oprah Winfrey and Michael Jackson, but over time the tone shifted. Both of them were more than just famous. They helped define an entire era. They came from different worlds, yet they shared something rare: real influence on a global scale. The kind that shapes how people think, what they talk about, and even how they see themselves. By the late 20th century, they had both reached a point where their names alone meant something. When Oprah spoke, people paid attention. When Michael performed, the whole world stopped to watch. So when their paths finally crossed in a real, direct way, it didn't feel like a chance. It felt like something that was always going to happen. To understand the tension later on, you have to understand who Oprah is at her core.
I'm Oprah Winfrey, and welcome to the very first National Oprah Winfrey Show!
Oprah Winfrey built her name on connection. Her show, The Oprah Winfrey Show, wasn't just about interviews. It changed how conversations happened on television. It made space for people to open up, to talk about pain, growth, secrets, and truth in a way that felt personal. That confessional style became her signature. But behind that warmth was something else: control. Oprah wasn't just a host, she was a media force. Through her company, Harpo Productions, and later her network, she built a platform where she decided what stories mattered. And when she focused on something, it didn't stay small. It became part of the global conversation. That's important, because it explains something people often miss. Oprah doesn't just tell stories, she shapes them. Now look at Michael Jackson. From the outside, he was larger than life, the king of pop. The artist behind Thriller is still the best-selling album of all time. He changed music. He changed dances. He broke barriers on platforms like MTV when few black artists were given that kind of visibility. But underneath all of that, there was a different story. A child star who grew up under intense pressure. A performer shaped by discipline, fear, and expectation, especially from his father, Joe Jackson. Fame didn't come to him later in life. It was his life. And over time, that kind of exposure creates distance not just from the public, but sometimes from reality itself. By the early 90s, Michael Jackson had become one of the most talked about and least understood figures in the world, which is exactly why that interview mattered so much.
I'm here in front of his California home. It's a ranch on the outskirts of Santa Barbara, where just inside is the man who has broken every possible musical record, denied interviews, and defied definition for years.
After avoiding major interviews for over a decade, Michael Jackson chose Oprah. That decision alone says a lot, because Oprah wasn't just any interviewer. She had built a reputation for getting people to open up in ways they didn't with anyone else. And when the interview aired, it delivered exactly that. Jackson spoke openly, sometimes uncomfortably so. He addressed the rumors people had been whispering about for years. He talked about his changing appearance and revealed publicly, for the first time, that he had vitiligo, a skin condition that affects pigmentation. He spoke about his childhood, the pressure, the pain, the relationship with his father. And in those moments, something shifted. For the first time in a long time, people weren't just seeing the icon. They were seeing the person. Oprah later said she felt he was honest, that there was something genuine in the way he spoke. There was even a sense, at least from the outside, that this could turn into a meaningful connection between two powerful figures who understood pressure in different ways. What makes this story even more interesting is that their connection didn't start there. Years earlier, their paths had already crossed indirectly. Quincy Jones, who worked closely with Michael Jackson, had seen Oprah on television and recognized something in her. He later encouraged her to audition for The Color Purple, which became a major moment in her early career. So in a way, their worlds had been linked long before they ever sat across from each other, which makes what happened next feel even more layered. Because when two people with that kind of shared orbit finally meet, there's an expectation, whether spoken or not, that something meaningful might come from it. And for a brief moment, it seemed like it did.
Michael Jackson's home is nothing like anyone would expect.
When Michael Jackson agreed to sit down with Oprah Winfrey in 1993, he didn't just open up about his life. He opened the doors to his home. This wasn't just another interview. It felt like a moment the whole world had been waiting for. Jackson hadn't done a major television interview in years. He had become more of a mystery than a person. People talked about him constantly, but very few actually heard from him directly. So when Oprah got that interview at Neverland Ranch, it instantly became one of the biggest TV moments of that era. And in that moment, there was something real. Jackson opened up in a way people didn't expect. He spoke about his childhood, the pressure from his father, his loneliness, and the way fame had shaped him. Oprah asked direct questions, sometimes uncomfortable ones, but she also gave him space to speak. Afterward, she said she liked him. She felt there was a sincerity there. From the outside, it looked like the start of something respectful, maybe even friendly, but that surface didn't last long. Later that same year, serious allegations were made against Michael Jackson, and from that point on, everything around him changed.
There have been many disgusting statements made recently concerning allegations of improper conduct on my part. These statements about me are totally false. As I have maintained from the very beginning, I am hoping for a speedy end to this horrifying experience to which I have been subjected.
Even though Michael Jackson tried to speak on it, the media pressure only grew stronger. Public opinion started to split, and he found himself in a place where every move, every silence, every appearance was being watched and judged. And Oprah, she didn't step in to defend him. She didn't publicly support him in the way some people expected. Instead, she stepped back. From her point of view, that made sense. She saw herself as a journalist, not a personal ally. Her job was to observe, to question, and to create space for conversations, not to take sides publicly in a case that was still unfolding. But from Jackson's side, or at least from how his supporters saw it, that distance felt different. It felt like silence at a moment when he needed support the most. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. At the center of this tension is a simple but powerful disconnect. Jackson had opened up to Oprah, not just as a global star, but as a person trying to explain himself to the world. That kind of openness creates a sense of trust, whether it's spoken or not. So when things got difficult, there may have been an expectation that she would stand beside him, or at least not turn away. But Oprah never saw their relationship that way. To her, that interview was professional. Meaningful, yes, but still professional. She wasn't part of his inner circle. She wasn't there to protect him. She was there to ask questions and tell stories. And that difference in perspective quietly created a gap that never really closed. As time went on, that gap didn't heal, it widened. During the 2005 trial involving Michael Jackson, the media coverage was everywhere. Every detail was analyzed. Every headline carried weight, and Oprah's platform became part of that wider conversation. She didn't openly criticize Michael Jackson, but she also didn't step in to defend him. Maybe it was simply because she didn't see their relationship as a close friendship. At the same time, Oprah Winfrey was focusing a lot of her show on topics like mistreatment cases and people sharing their survival stories during that period. To many viewers, the timing felt hard to ignore, almost like more than just a coincidence. For some, it looked like she was leaning into a narrative that painted Jackson in a negative light. For others, it was simply her doing what she had always done, creating space for difficult conversations that matter. And that's where things split again. What one group sees as responsible storytelling, another group can see as bias. There was no clear statement, no confrontation between them. Just a growing sense that whatever connection existed was now gone.
The king of pop has died. Michael Jackson, the pop music and dance innovator, passed away yesterday.
When Michael Jackson passed away in 2009, the world paused. People reflected on his music, his influence, and the complicated life he lived. Oprah also spoke about him during that time. She acknowledged his talent, his humanity, and the vulnerability he showed in their interview years earlier. She even expressed that she was surprised by how open he had been, how much pain he carried from his childhood. But even at that moment, not everyone was convinced. Some felt her reflections came too late. That speaking kindly after his passing didn't erase the distance she kept during the hardest years of his life. So the tension never really went away. It just faded into the background for a while. Not fully spoken about, but still there, underneath everything. Then years later, it all came back into public attention again in 2019, when the documentary Leaving Neverland was released. The film brought fresh discussion and strong reactions all over again. After that, Oprah Winfrey hosted a follow-up special called Oprah Winfrey Presents After Neverland. It was a sit-down discussion focused on the themes raised in the documentary, and it pushed the conversation back into the spotlight once more. In that special, she interviewed the two men featured in the documentary and gave them space to tell their stories in detail. Oprah made her position clear. She said she believed them, but she also framed the conversation in a broader way. To her, this wasn't just about one person. It was about understanding trauma, listening to survivors, and encouraging open conversations about abuse. Still, for Jackson's family and many of his fans, this felt like a turning point that confirmed their worst suspicions. They believed she had chosen a side. And not just any side, but one that directly challenged the legacy of someone she had once sat across from, listened to, and seemingly connected with. To them, it wasn't just journalism anymore. It felt personal. What makes this situation stay relevant isn't just the people involved. It's what the situation represents. Because when you look closely, the tension between Michael Jackson and Oprah Winfrey touches on something deeper than headlines. It raises questions that don't have easy answers. Can a journalist ever truly stay neutral in a story like this? Does giving someone a platform mean you're taking their side? And when someone opens up to you publicly, does that create a personal responsibility that goes beyond the job? There's no clear agreement on any of this, and maybe that's why the conversation hasn't faded. In the end, there was no dramatic fallout between them, no public argument, no direct exchange of words. just distance. A distance built on different expectations, different roles, and different ways of seeing the same events. Some people will always believe Oprah did exactly what she was supposed to do. Others will always feel she crossed a line. And somewhere in between, there's a quieter truth. Sometimes, relationships, especially ones formed under the spotlight, don't break because of one big moment. They shift slowly through silence, through choices, through the things that are done, and the things that aren't. But through all of this, what really hurt the family of Michael Jackson wasn't just Oprah's interview with the people who made claims about him. It was the feeling that so many people trusted her platform so deeply, and that she still moved forward regardless of how painful it felt to them.
And so here's the reason why I'm here. In 25 years of the Oprah Show, I taped 217 episodes on sexual abuse.
Oprah Winfrey's influence doesn't come from formal authority or titles. It comes from something more personal: connection. The ability to reach people in a way that feels direct, emotional, and real. She has a way of taking complex, uncomfortable topics and bringing them down to a human level. Instead of statistics or distant analysis, she focuses on real stories, real people, real pain, real growth. That's what people often call the Oprah effect. It's not just influence. It's an emotional influence. When Oprah talks about something, she doesn't just inform you. She makes you feel it. One of the reasons this works is that she has always been open about her own life. She has spoken about her past, growing up in poverty, experiencing mistreatment, and facing challenges that many people would rather keep hidden. By doing that, she created space for others to speak. Topics that once felt too private, mental health struggles, domestic violence, and trauma, suddenly became part of everyday conversation. And when millions of people are having the same conversation at once, it starts to shift culture. Oprah's influence doesn't stop at conversation, it translates into action. When she endorsed Barack Obama during the 2008 election, it wasn't just a celebrity endorsement. It had a measurable impact. People who trusted her judgment took that step seriously, and it helped shape public perception at a critical moment. The same thing happened with her book club. A single recommendation from Oprah could take an unknown author and turn their work into a global bestseller almost overnight. That's not just popularity, that's cultural direction. She also used her platform to push for real-world change, supporting efforts like the National Child Protection Act, often referred to as the Oprah Bill. So when Oprah gives attention to a topic, it doesn't stay small. It grows, it spreads, and it often becomes part of the larger narrative that people believe.
Now it's 100-fold. With any mistake that you make is glorified, and you have the haters and the trolls and all that stuff.
Fame doesn't just give you visibility, it puts you under constant observation. Celebrities live inside what many describe as a media machine, where attention is valuable, but privacy is almost non-existent. And when that machine turns negative, it can be overwhelming. Some celebrities push back. They give interviews, deny rumors, and try to correct the narrative. Others pull away completely. You've seen people like Emma Watson take breaks from acting to regain balance, or Jim Carrey stepped back and spoke openly about how disconnected he felt from the industry at times. Because constant attention, even positive attention, comes with pressure. And when that attention turns critical or invasive, it can feel suffocating. Some describe it as being watched all the time. Others describe it as losing control over their own story. And just a few people experienced that shift more dramatically than Michael Jackson.
Metamorphosis into some other creature. I said, great, that's who we gotta get. So I said, get in touch with.
In the beginning, the media loved him. As part of the Jackson 5, he was seen as a talented, disciplined child star. As a solo artist, especially during the Thriller era, he was celebrated as a genius. The coverage focused on his music, his innovation, and his ability to break barriers. But by the mid-1980s, the tone of the coverage started to shift. Less about music, more about his personal life, his appearance, his behavior, his choices. That's when the nickname Wacko Jacko started appearing in tabloids, a label he openly disliked. Stories became more sensational, rumors spread faster than facts, and over time, the focus moved away from his work and towards speculation. This wasn't just criticism, it became a pattern. Things reached another level during the legal cases in 1993 and 2005. At that point, the coverage turned into what many described as a media circus. Every detail was reported, every rumor was repeated, and in many cases, public opinion formed long before any legal conclusion was reached. This is what people mean when they talk about the court of public opinion. It's not about what's proven, it's about what people believe. And once that belief sets in, it's incredibly hard to change. For Michael Jackson, this created a sense of betrayal. He had once been celebrated by the same media that now questioned him at every turn. And you can hear that frustration in his music. Songs like "Leave Me Alone" and "They Don't Care About Us" weren't just creative expressions, they were responses, ways of pushing back against how he felt he was being treated. For Oprah Winfrey, her strength comes from working inside the media system. She uses television and interviews to bring attention to certain voices, shape how stories are told, and steer public conversations in a clear direction. For Michael Jackson, it was different. He often ended up responding to that same system instead of guiding it. He tried to defend himself when stories came up, tried to correct what he felt was wrong, and at times simply tried to step away from the constant attention. That difference is important, because when someone like Oprah chooses to focus on an issue, it naturally carries a lot of weight. But when someone like Michael Jackson becomes the subject of that focus, they don't always get the same control over how everything is framed or remembered. When you put it all together, the tension between Oprah Winfrey and Michael Jackson starts to look less like a personal issue and more like something structural. It isn't really about feelings between two individuals. It's about the positions they occupied. Oprah's work is built around asking questions, digging into stories, and bringing private experiences into public view. Michael Jackson's reality, especially in his later years, often meant living inside those questions, with the media interpreting, challenging, and reacting to his life in real time. At its core, this goes beyond just two celebrities. It's about how influence operates in public life, who gets to shape the story, who becomes the subject of it, and how that balance plays out when both sides are powerful in very different ways. When their paths crossed, it wasn't just a straightforward personality clash. It felt more like two different forces heading in separate directions, only briefly intersecting without ever really aligning in the same space. But Eddie Murphy has also weighed in on that in his own way.
Yeah, that was surreal too.
And you had dinner with him?
Yeah, a few times. A few times I went to his house and had dinner in a hotel. And it was.
When you look at someone like Eddie Murphy talking about fame over the years, one idea keeps coming up in different ways. What the public sees is never the full story. From the outside, fame looks loud and dramatic. Headlines, interviews, controversies, applause. But inside it, things are often much more ordinary. People know each other casually. They move in the same circles. They share moments that never reach the public. That gap between what's seen and what's real is where a lot of misunderstanding starts. Now use that lens to understand Oprah Winfrey and Michael Jackson. Oprah built her influence through storytelling. She brings people into emotional conversations, asks direct questions, and focuses on personal truth. Her style makes viewers feel connected to the person on screen, not just informed about them. Michael Jackson's experience was almost the opposite. He lived in constant attention, sometimes praise, sometimes suspicion, sometimes harsh scrutiny. Over time, he became more of a subject being examined than a person being understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had me like talking jive to Spock in San Francisco.
Murphy's way of describing fame helps make sense of this dynamic. He treats it like something you learn to live with rather than something that defines you completely. That distance between public image and private reality is key. From that perspective, relationships between celebrities often look different inside the industry than they do outside it. People may know each other casually. They may respect each other. But the public often projects stronger emotional meanings onto those connections than actually exist. That's important when thinking about figures like Michael Jackson and Oprah Winfrey, because what the audience sees is shaped heavily by media framing, not personal access. Over time, Michael Jackson became one of the most scrutinized figures in the world. His life was constantly analyzed in public spaces, his appearance, his behavior, and his legal challenges, and during those moments, media coverage often shaped public opinion before facts were fully understood. Oprah, on the other hand, worked in a space where storytelling itself influences perception. Even without taking sides directly, the choice of topics, guests, and framing can shape how audiences interpret a person's story. That's where misunderstanding can develop. When you step back, the idea that Michael Jackson hated Oprah doesn't come from anything clearly documented or direct. It comes more from interpretation, distance, and how people read media narratives over time. Inside the industry, relationships are often more layered and less dramatic than the outside assumes. As Murphy's perspective suggests, familiarity doesn't always mean emotional intensity, and silence doesn't always mean conflict. What exists instead is a mix of professional interaction, public storytelling, audience interpretation, and media amplification. Those layers blend until the original moment becomes something larger than itself. The situation between Oprah Winfrey and Michael Jackson isn't really about a personal feud or simple hostility. It sits more in the space between public narrative and private reality. Over the years, Michael Jackson became one of the most heavily reported figures in the world, and not all of that coverage felt balanced. As headlines grew louder and more dramatic, several major art people around Manytree started pushing back. Their point wasn't to dismiss everything being said, but to question whether the full picture was actually being shown. They argued that fame at that level can distort how a person is seen, where every detail gets amplified and context often gets lost. So while the media kept building one version of events, others close to the industry kept stepping in to remind people that layers were missing from that story. And the people speaking weren't random fans. These were icons. People who knew fame, pressure, and public judgment from the inside. One of the most emotional voices was Diana Ross. She didn't speak like someone reacting to gossip. She spoke like someone defending a friend she had known for decades.
How would you describe Michael Jackson - Diana Ross? What is that?
Well, you see, we actually love each other. He's like one of my children.
After the documentary Leaving Neverland came out, she publicly expressed deep trust in Michael's character, calling him a magnificent force and standing firm on her belief in his legacy. That kind of loyalty didn't come from headlines. It came from history. Then you have Macaulay Culkin. He wasn't just a fan or a distant supporter. He grew up around Jackson.
Nothing happened, I mean, nothing really. I mean, we played video games, we played it at his amusement park. Well, the thing is with that whole thing is that, they go, oh, you slept in the same bedroom as him. It's like, I don't think you understand. Michael Jackson's bedroom is 2 stories. And it has like 3 bathrooms and this and that. So when I slept in his bedroom, yeah, but you have to understand the whole scenario.
Talked about young boy sleeping in his bedroom. Well, you and your brother Kieran had done that.
Yeah, it wasn't anything like weird. It wasn't anything we thought about. We go to the movies and we do this, we do that. And it's like, okay, you plop down, you go to sleep, you wake up. It's just kind of just what happens,
He even testified during the 2005 trial. His message stayed consistent over the years. He never saw anything inappropriate, and he pushed back hard against the idea that the media version matched his real-life experience. Comedy legend Chris Tucker also stepped into that courtroom. He spoke about Michael in a completely different light than what the tabloids were painting. For him, Jackson was generous, funny, and kind, and he openly questioned how quickly public opinion turned into judgment. In the music world, support came from heavyweights too. Kanye West and LL Cool J both challenged the way the media framed Jackson. Their point was simple but powerful. Don't erase an entire legacy because of controversy. Separate the art from the noise. Look at what he actually built. Then there's Alicia Keys, who openly criticized how the media treated him, saying his story was often reduced to jokes and scandal instead of his cultural impact. And legends like Stevie Wonder and Madonna consistently reminded the world of something important. Whatever people thought about the headlines, Michael Jackson changed music forever. He broke barriers, shaped pop culture, and inspired generations. Even outside that circle, voices like Stephanie Mills pushed back against how the media handled his story, criticizing how quickly narratives turned into accusations without balance. When you put all of this together, a different picture starts to form. Because while one side of the world was feeding on controversy, another side was speaking from personal experience, loyalty, and lived moments that never made the headlines. And that's what makes the story of Michael Jackson so complex.